On a stormy night in November, a terrified woman named Clara Mitchell did the unthinkable. With a feverish infant in her arms and a stolen sedan running on fumes, she breached the perimeter of the most dangerous territory in the state, the Sterling estate. She thought she was running to her death. She expected the alpha, Dominic Sterling, to tear her apart for trespassing. But she was wrong. When the ruthless alpha looked down at the shivering rogue shielding her pup, he didn't see an enemy. He didn't even see a stranger. His wolf roared a single command that would change the fate of his entire pack: mine. This is the true story of how a rogue Omega became the queen of the iron-fisted Sterling pack in a single heartbeat. The rain wasn't just falling, it was punishing the earth. Clara Mitchell gripped the steering wheel of the 2018 Ford sedan until her knuckles turned the color of old bone. The windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle against the deluge, slapping back and forth in a frantic rhythm that matched the hammering of her heart. In the back seat, strapped into a car seat that she had bought second-hand for $20, was Leo. He was 18 months old, and he had been crying for the last 100 miles. Now, silence had fallen, and that terrified Clara more than the noise. "Just a little further, baby," Clara whispered, her voice cracking. "Mama's going to get us somewhere safe, I promise." She was lying. She had no idea where safe was. Clara was an Omega without a pack. In the hierarchy of the wolf world, that made her less than nothing. She was a target, a liability. She had fled the Greystone Pack in Oregon 3 days ago, leaving behind a history of neglect and a pack leader, Alpha Silas, who viewed her son as a stain on his reputation because Leo was born a runt. The GPS on her phone flickered and died. She was flying blind on a winding back road near the Montana border. She knew, vaguely, that she was entering the territory of the Sterling pack. Every wolf in the country knew the name Sterling. Dominic Sterling. He was not just an alpha. He was a corporate tycoon who ran Sterling Industries by day and ruled the largest territory in the Northwest by night. Rumors said he had killed his own uncle to take the seat. Rumors said he didn't tolerate rogues. "He kills trespassers," the voice in her head whispered. "Better a quick death from a stranger than what Silas will do if he catches us," she thought grimly. Suddenly, a pair of headlights blinded her from the rearview mirror. A massive black truck was tailing her, surging forward with aggressive speed. It wasn't Silas. He drove a sports car. This was perimeter patrol. Panic spiked in her chest. She slammed her foot on the gas. The sedan shuddered, the tires losing traction on the slick asphalt. "No, no, no!" she screamed. The car fishtailed. Clara overcorrected. The sedan spun violently, careening off the road and smashing through the wooden guardrail. The world turned into a kaleidoscope of breaking glass and spinning trees before the car slammed into the muddy embankment of the Black River. Silence returned, heavier than before. "Leo!" Clara gasped, struggling against the airbag. She unbuckled, ignoring the searing pain in her shoulder, and scrambled into the back seat. Leo was awake, eyes wide and terrified, but he wasn't crying. A trickle of blood ran down his forehead from a tiny cut. "I've got you! I've got you!" She ripped the car seat buckles open and pulled him against her chest. The car was groaning, sinking slightly into the mud. She kicked the door open and stumbled out into the freezing rain. She was soaked instantly. The cold bit into her skin like needles. She looked up the embankment. High above, on the road, the truck had stopped. Doors were opening. She couldn't go up. She had to go into the woods. Clutching Leo inside her oversized denim jacket, Clara ran. She didn't shift into her wolf. She couldn't carry Leo if she did. She ran in her human form, her boots slipping on wet pine needles, the branches whipping her face. She could hear them behind her. Heavy paws hitting the earth. Not humans. Wolves. The patrol had shifted. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out. She collapsed near the base of a massive oak tree, curling her body around Leo to shield him from the rain and the predators. "Hush now," she hummed, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "Close your eyes, Leo." A low, thunderous growl vibrated through the ground, shaking her very bones. Clara looked up. Standing 10 feet away was a wolf the size of a grizzly bear. His fur was pitch black, darker than the night, and his eyes were a piercing, molten gold. He didn't look like a patrol wolf. He looked like death incarnate. It was him. It had to be. The Alpha. Clara squeezed Leo tighter, bowing her head, exposing her neck in the universal sign of submission. She prepared for the bite that would end her life. "Please," she whispered, though she knew wolves in this form couldn't speak human words. "Not him. Just me. Please, not him." The massive black wolf took a step forward, his lips peeling back to reveal ivory fangs. He lowered his massive head toward her, sniffing the air. He smelled the fear. He smelled the rogue scent. And then he froze. Dominic Sterling was having a terrible night. Negotiations with a rival firm in Seattle had stalled. His head of security had reported a breach in the southern grid. And now he was standing in the mud in the middle of a thunderstorm, hunting a rogue who had been stupid enough to drive a sedan off a cliff. He had shifted into his wolf, Titan, to track the scent quickly and end the threat. His territory was a sanctuary for his pack, a fortress. He did not allow variables. He did not allow weaknesses. His beta, a grey wolf named Kale, flanked him to the left. Kale sent a mind link message. "Found the car. Empty. Scent leads north. It's a female. Distressed." "I have her," Dominic growled back through the link. He saw the figure huddled under the oak tree. Small, fragile, trembling so violently it was pathetic. Dominic felt nothing but cold irritation. Rogues were usually spies or thieves. He approached, ready to intimidate, to demand submission, and then exile her. He stepped closer, the rain matting his black fur. He could smell the metallic tang of blood. Hers or the child's? Wait. Child? He paused. The bundle in her arms shifted. A pup. She had brought a pup into a war zone. Dominic's irritation spiked. Irresponsible, reckless. He lowered his head to sniff her neck, intending to memorize her scent for the banishment order. The smell hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't the smell of wet dog or dirty rogue. It was vanilla, wild honey, and something electric, like ozone before a lightning strike. Titan, his wolf, who had been silent and predatory a moment ago, suddenly slammed against the walls of Dominic's mind. Mate. The word didn't just appear, it exploded. It drowned out the sound of the rain. It drowned out Dominic's logic. Mate, Luna, puppy. Dominic staggered back a step, his massive paws slipping in the mud. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. Impossible. He was Dominic Sterling. He was 32 years old. He had long ago accepted that he wouldn't find a mate, and he didn't want one. A mate was a weakness, but Titan was taking over. The urge to kill vanished, replaced instantly by a primal, overwhelming need to protect. The woman was looking at him with wide, terrified hazel eyes. She was offering her neck. She thought he was going to kill her. The thought made Dominic sick. He whined. The sound was high and uncharacteristic for a creature of his size. Clara flinched at the sound. Dominic couldn't stand it. He needed to be human. He needed to speak to her. He retreated behind the thick trunk of the oak tree. Bones cracked and reshaped. Within seconds, Dominic Sterling stepped out from behind the tree. He was unclothed, but he didn't care. He stood 6'4", corded with muscle, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. He didn't look cold. He looked like a statue carved from granite. "Stand up," he commanded. His voice was deep, rough from the shift. Clara scrambled to her feet, clutching Leo so tight the baby let out a small whimper. She kept her eyes on the ground. I didn't mean to trespass," she stammered, her teeth chattering. "My car. The storm. Please, Alpha. I'll leave. Just let me walk to the border." Dominic took a step closer. The pull was magnetic. He wanted to wrap his arms around her and warm her skin. He wanted to take the child and check him for injuries. "You aren't going anywhere," Dominic said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Clara took a step back, hitting the tree trunk. "Please, he's just a baby. He's not a threat." "I know," Dominic said. He looked at the bundle. "Is he yours?" "Yes." "Is there a father?" Dominic asked. The question came out sharper than he intended. Titan was pacing in his mind, growling at the thought of another male. "No," Clara said quickly. Too quickly. "Just us." Dominic nodded. He took off the tactical watch he was still wearing on his wrist, the only thing that had survived the shift, and shoved it into his pocket. "My name is Dominic Sterling," he said. "Do you know who I am?" Clara nodded jerkily. "Yes, Alpha." "Then you know I don't repeat myself. Give me the boy." Clara's eyes snapped up to his, filled with horror. "No!" "You are freezing," Dominic said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming softer. "You are in shock. You cannot carry him up that hill. Give me the pup. I will carry him. You will walk in front of me." Clara hesitated. She looked at the Alpha's hands, large, powerful hands that could crush a skull. Then she looked at Leo, whose lips were turning blue from the cold. With shaking hands, she passed the sleeping toddler to the naked stranger. Dominic took the child. The boy was surprisingly heavy. Leo stirred, opening sleepy eyes to look at the stranger. He didn't cry. He reached out a chubby hand and grabbed Dominic's wet hair. Dominic felt a strange warmth bloom in his chest, right next to the bond he felt for the woman. "What is your name?" Dominic asked, looking at her. "Clara," she whispered. "Clara Mitchell." "Clara," he tested the name. It tasted right. "My beta is approaching with a vehicle. You are coming home with me." To the cells?" she asked fearfully. Dominic looked at her, his gold-flecked eyes intense. "No, Clara, not to the cells. To the manor." Just then, Kyle burst through the brush in his human form, wearing patrol gear. He stopped dead when he saw his Alpha naked, holding a rogue baby, standing guard over a shivering woman. "Alpha?" Kyle asked, confused. "What's the call? Intruder protocol." Dominic turned to his beta. The look on his face terrified Kyle more than any rage ever had. It was a look of absolute possession. "Code Red," Dominic said calmly. "Get the SUV warmed up and call Dr. Aris. Tell him to meet us at the master suite." Kale's jaw dropped. "The master suite, sir? Your bedroom?" Dominic glared. "Did I stutter?" "No, Alpha. And Kyle," Dominic added, glancing back at Clara, who was hugging herself for warmth. "Give her your jacket. If she shivers one more time, you're running perimeter laps for a month." The drive to the Sterling estate was silent and suffocating. Clara sat in the back of the luxury SUV, wrapped in the beta's oversized tactical jacket. It smelled of pine and rain, but underneath she could smell the sterile leather of the car and the overwhelming scent of the man sitting in the front passenger seat. Dominic. He had dressed in spare sweats kept in the trunk, but he still radiated power. Every few seconds, his eyes would flick to the rearview mirror, locking onto hers. It wasn't a predatory gaze, but it was intense, possessive. It made her skin prickle. Leo had fallen asleep in a car seat Dominic had miraculously produced from the trunk. Apparently, the pack kept emergency supplies for foundlings. Clara's mind was racing. Why the master suite? Why is he being so gentle? She knew the stories. Alphas didn't bring rogues into their homes unless they were creating a harem or looking for servants. Was that it? Did he want her as a maid, or worse? The car slowed as they approached a massive iron gate. The sterling emblem, a wolf holding a sword, was wrought into the metal. The gate swung open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient pines. At the top of the hill sat the manor. It wasn't a house, it was a fortress of stone and glass, illuminated by golden floodlights. It looked like a castle from a modern fairy tale, but Clara knew that castles had dungeons. The SUV stopped under the portico. Dominic was out of the car before the engine died. He opened her door. "Leave the bag," he said, eyeing her meager duffel. "You won't need it." "It has Leo's diapers," she protested, clutching the strap. "We will buy more," Dominic said. He reached in and unbuckled Leo with surprising dexterity. He lifted the sleeping boy onto his hip. "Come." Clara followed him, her legs feeling like jelly. They walked into a grand foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that looked like cascading diamonds. Standing in the center of the room was a woman. She was tall, blonde, and beautiful in a sharp, icy way. She wore a silk blouse and tailored trousers. She smelled of expensive perfume and irritation. This was Vanessa, the pack's head of public relations, and, if the tabloids were true, the woman actively campaigning to be Dominic's Luna. Vanessa's eyes widened when she saw Dominic holding a dirty, sleeping baby. Her gaze then snapped to Clara, taking in her muddy boots, the beta's jacket, and the matted hair. "Dominic." Vanessa stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble. "What is this? Security said you caught an intruder. Why is she in the foyer, and whose child is that?" "Her name is Clara," Dominic said, his voice flat. He didn't stop walking. "She is a guest." "A guest?" Vanessa laughed, a harsh sound. "Dom, she's a rogue. Look at her. She's filthy. You can't bring strays into the main house. Think of the optics. The gala is in 2 days." Dominic stopped. He turned slowly to face Vanessa. The air in the room grew heavy. "Vanessa," Dominic said quietly, "prepare the guest room next to mine. The blue room." Vanessa recoiled as if slapped. "The blue room? That's reserved for visiting alphas. Put her in the servants' quarters if you must keep her." I said. Dominic's voice dropped into a growl that vibrated the crystals in the chandelier. "The blue room. And get the chef to prepare warm broth and soft foods for the child. Now." Vanessa paled. She looked at Clara with pure venom. "Yes, Alpha." She turned and marched away, pulling her phone out as she went. Clara knew that look. Vanessa was going to call someone. Trouble was coming. Dominic led Clara up the sweeping staircase. "Ignore her. She forgets her place." "She's your mate?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. Dominic stopped on the landing. He turned to her, his face inches from hers. He reached out, his thumb grazing her cheekbone, wiping away a smear of mud. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through Clara that nearly made her knees buckle. "No," Dominic whispered roughly. "She is not my mate." He leaned in, inhaling her scent again. "You are safe here, Clara. No one will touch you or the boy. I swear it on my wolf." Clara stared at him. An alpha swearing on his wolf to a rogue? It was unheard of. They reached the top of the stairs and walked down a long corridor. Dominic opened a set of double doors. The room was larger than Clara's entire apartment back in Oregon. A king-sized bed with blue velvet bedding, a fireplace that was already crackling with warmth, and a wall of windows overlooking the stormy forest. "The bathroom is through there," Dominic pointed. "There are fresh robes. Dr. Aris will be here in 10 minutes to check the boy." He placed Leo gently in the center of the massive bed. Leo curled up instantly into the velvet. Clara stood awkwardly by the door. "Alpha Sterling, why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" Dominic looked at her. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to say, "Because you are mine. Because I have waited a lifetime for you." But he saw how fragile she was. If he told her now, she would think he was claiming her as property. She would run, and he couldn't chase her again. It would break her. "I am simply doing my duty," Dominic lied smoothly. "The Sterling Pack protects the vulnerable. Rest. We will talk in the morning." He turned and left, closing the heavy oak door with a soft click. As soon as the door latched, Clara rushed to the lock and twisted it. She backed away, sliding down the wall until she hit the floor. She buried her face in her hands. She was warm, she was dry. Leo was safe. But she was in the heart of the most powerful pack in the country, and the Alpha looked at her like he wanted to devour her whole. And the worst part? When he touched her cheek, her own inner wolf, which had been dormant and silent for years due to trauma, had stirred. It had whispered a single word back to her. Home. The knock on the door was gentle, but Clara flinched as if it were a gunshot. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching Leo's chest rise and fall in the deep sleep of exhaustion. "Come in," she whispered, smoothing her wet hair. The door opened, revealing a short, balding man with kind eyes and a medical bag. Behind him, looming like a shadow in the hallway, was Dominic. He had changed into a dark grey t-shirt and jeans, but the casual clothes did nothing to diminish the terrifying aura of power that clung to him. "I am Dr. Aris," the man said softly. "Alpha Sterling tells me you and the little one had a rough landing." "We're fine," Clara said instinctively. It was the rogue mantra. Deny pain. Show no weakness. Humor me. Dr. Aris smiled. He approached the bed and began to check Leo. He listened to the boy's chest, checked his pupils, and cleaned the small cut on his forehead. "He has a low-grade fever," Dr. Aris noted, pulling a small bottle from his bag. "Likely from the exposure to the rain. This antibiotic will knock it out by morning. He's a strong pup." Clara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you." "Now you," Aris said, turning to her. "I'm fine," Clara insisted, crossing her arms over the plush robe. "Clara." Dominic spoke from the doorway. He hadn't entered the room, respecting her space, but his voice carried that undeniable weight of command. "Let him check you. You hit the dashboard." Clara bit her lip. She couldn't refuse an Alpha's direct order. Slowly, she allowed Dr. Aris to check her pulse and the bruising on her shoulder. "I need to check your back," Dr. Aris said, "to make sure there's no spinal damage from the impact." Clara froze. "No, my back is fine." "Ms. Mitchell, please." Clara looked at Dominic. He was watching her intensely. If she refused, it would look suspicious. With trembling fingers, she loosened the robe and let it slide down her shoulders, just enough to expose her upper back. The room went dead silent. It wasn't just the fresh purple bruise from the car accident. Crisscrossing her pale skin were lines of silver and white, old scars, lash marks. Some were faded from years ago. Others looked only a few months old. A low, vibrating sound filled the room. It sounded like a generator failing or a distant earthquake. Clara pulled the robe up quickly, her face burning with shame. She looked at the door. Dominic's eyes had shifted. The human hazel was gone, replaced by glowing, predatory gold. His hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. The growl was coming from him. "Who?" Dominic asked. The word was barely a whisper, but it carried enough rage to level a city. "It doesn't matter," Clara said, her voice shaking. "It's in the past." "It matters." Dominic stepped into the room. The air pressure seemed to drop. "Was it the father?" "No," Clara said quickly. "No, just pack discipline from before." "Discipline?" Dominic snarled. "That is torture. That is what we do to traitors, not Omegas." Dr. Aris cleared his throat, sensing the volatility of the situation. "Alpha, your pheromones. You're scaring her." Dominic froze. He looked at Clara, who was pressing herself back against the headboard, eyes wide. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, forcing Titan back into the cage of his mind. "I apologize," Dominic said stiffly. He opened his eyes. They were human again, but filled with a profound sorrow. "You are safe here, Clara. No one will ever mark you again. I will tear the throat out of anyone who tries." Clara felt a strange fluttering in her chest. It wasn't fear. It was relief. No one had ever been angry for her. Usually they were angry at her. "You have some bruised ribs," Dr. Aris said, trying to normalize the atmosphere. "And mild hypothermia. I'll leave some pain medication. Rest is the only cure." The doctor packed his bag quickly. As he walked past Dominic, he paused and whispered something too low for Clara's human ears to catch. "She is your mate, isn't she, Dom? I see the way you look at her." Dominic didn't look at the doctor. He just gave a barely perceptible nod. "She's broken, Dom," Aris whispered back. "Be careful. If you push too hard, she'll shatter." Dr. Oris left. Dominic lingered by the door. "Sleep," he said. "There is a guard at the end of the hall. His name is Ben. If you need anything, anything at all, open the door and tell him. He will get me." "Why?" Clara asked again, the question escaping her before she could stop it. "Why are you helping a rogue?" Dominic looked at her for a long moment. The storm outside lashed against the windows, but inside it was warm. "Because," Dominic said, his voice dropping to that rough, intimate timbre that made her toes curl. "My wolf seems to think you're important. And he's rarely wrong." He closed the door. Clara stared at the wood grain. She touched her chest. Her heart was racing, not from the adrenaline of the crash, but from the memory of his golden eyes. She crawled into the bed next to Leo, pulling the heavy duvet up to her chin. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't sleep with one eye open. The sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows was blinding. Clara woke with a start, disoriented by the luxury around her. The blue velvet, the high ceilings, the smell of lavender and fresh linen. Memory crashed back in. The accident. The Alpha. Dominic. Leo was sitting up next to her, babbling happily at a dust mote floating in the sunbeam. His fever was gone. "Mama!" he squealed, bouncing on the mattress. "Hey, Bug!" Clara smiled, pulling him into a hug. "You hungry?" "Hungry," Leo confirmed. Clara's stomach growled in agreement. She realized she hadn't eaten in 24 hours. She got up and found fresh clothes laid out on the armchair. Black leggings and a soft, oversized grey sweater. They were brand new, the tags still on. There were even toddler clothes for Leo. He thought of everything, she mused, a flush rising to her cheeks. She dressed them both and cautiously opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, though she saw a large man in a suit standing by the stairs. Ben, the guard. He nodded respectfully as she passed. "Kitchen?" she asked timidly. "Ground floor, left past the foyer, ma'am," Ben said. Clara carried Leo down the grand staircase. The house was quiet, likely because it was mid-morning on a weekday. She found the kitchen easily. It was a massive, industrial-style space with stainless steel appliances and a marble island the size of a small car. But it wasn't empty. Sitting at the island, sipping an espresso while typing furiously on a tablet, was Vanessa. She looked up as Clara entered. Her eyes narrowed, scanning Clara from head to toe. "So," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "the stray is awake." Clara held Leo tighter. "Good morning. I was just looking for some milk for my son." Vanessa sighed and tapped a manicured nail on the granite counter. "Let's cut the act, shall we? I know what you're doing." "I don't know what you mean," Clara said. "Oh, please. You're a rogue with a sob story and a bastard child. You saw a rich, powerful alpha and decided to play the damsel in distress." Vanessa stood up and walked over to her purse. She pulled out a checkbook. "Dominic has a savior complex," Vanessa said, scribbling on a check. "He likes broken things, but he gets bored easily. And frankly, having a rogue in the house is embarrassing for him. We have a reputation to maintain." She ripped the check out and slid it across the island. $10,000, Vanessa said. "Enough to get you to Canada, set you up in a nice little apartment. Far away from here." Clara looked at the check. It was more money than she had ever seen. It was freedom. "Take it," Vanessa urged, "because if you stay, I will make your life a living hell, and eventually Dominic will realize you're just a liability. Do you really want your son to watch you get thrown out like garbage?" Clara's hand hovered over the check. The fear of Alpha Silas finding her was real. With this money, she could disappear. Clara started. "She doesn't want your money, Vanessa." The voice came from the doorway leading to the garden. Dominic stood there, leaning against the frame. He was wearing a dark blue suit, looking every inch the corporate king, but his eyes were cold, ice cold. Vanessa jumped. "Dom, I was just helping her. She has no resources. I thought it would be kind to help her get settled." "By bribing her to leave my territory?" Dominic walked into the room. He didn't look at Vanessa. He walked straight to Clara. He reached out and took the check from the counter. He didn't tear it up. He simply crumpled it in his fist and tossed it into the trash can as if it were a used tissue. "Clara is not leaving," Dominic said calmly. "Dom, be reasonable," Vanessa snapped, losing her composure. "The annual charity gala is tomorrow night. The entire Pack Council will be there. The investors. The press. You can't have a rogue living in the master hall while we're hosting the elite. It's a scandal." Dominic turned to Vanessa slowly. "You're right. It would be odd for her to be hiding in the room." He turned back to Clara. His gaze softened, the ice melting into that liquid gold warmth. "That is why she will be attending the gala with me." Clara gasped. "What?" "No. Alpha, I can't. I don't have a dress. I don't know how to act in high society. I'm just an Omega." "You are my guest," Dominic corrected, "and you will be by my side." "This is insanity," Vanessa shrieked. "She's a nobody. You're going to bring a stray to the biggest event of the year? Over me?" Dominic stepped closer to Vanessa, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Careful, Vanessa. You work for me. You do not own me. And if you ever speak to her or her son with disrespect again, you won't just lose your job. You will lose your tongue." Vanessa turned pale. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the kitchen, her heels clacking violently against the floor. Silence returned to the kitchen. "You didn't have to do that," Clara whispered, looking down at Leo, who was oblivious to the tension, chewing on his own fist. "I wanted to," Dominic said. He reached out and gently touched Leo's hair, then let his hand brush against Clara's arm. The sparks were stronger today, harder to ignore. "But the gala," Clara said anxiously. "I'll humiliate you." "Clara," Dominic said, forcing her to look at him. "Do you trust me? I barely know you." "True," Dominic smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. "But do you trust that I can keep you safe?" Clara thought about the way he had held Leo in the rain, the way he had stood between her and the doctor, the way he had just shut down Vanessa. "Yes," she admitted. "I think I do." "Good," Dominic said. "Then leave the details to me. Tonight, you rest. Tomorrow, you shine." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Oh, and Clara." "Yes, Alpha. Stop calling me Alpha. My name is Dominic." The Sterling Foundation Gala was the social event of the Pacific Northwest. Held in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in Seattle, it was a convergence of human wealth and werewolf power. Clara stood in front of the floor-length mirror in the master suite, hardly recognizing the woman staring back. A team of stylists, flown in from Los Angeles by Dominic, had spent 3 hours working on her. Her hair, usually a messy knot, now cascaded in soft, glossy waves down her back. Her makeup was subtle, but highlighted the hazel in her eyes, making them look like polished amber. But it was the dress that stole the breath from her lungs. It was a custom Vera Wang gown, silk chiffon in a deep midnight blue that matched the sterling pack colors. It hugged her curves modestly but alluringly, with a slit that allowed for movement. Around her neck sat a diamond solitaire pendant, simple, but likely worth more than her entire life's earnings. "You look breathtaking," a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. Clara turned. Dominic stood there, adjusting the cuffs of his Tom Ford tuxedo. He looked devastating. The stark black and white of the suit contrasted sharply with his tanned skin and the predatory gold flecks in his eyes. "I feel like an imposter," Clara admitted, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the silk. "Dominic, everyone there knows who I am, or they'll smell the rogue on me." Dominic walked over to her. He didn't stop until he was standing directly behind her, their eyes meeting in the mirror. He placed his hands on her bare shoulders. His skin was hot. "They will not smell a rogue," Dominic said, his voice low and fierce. "I have scented you." Clara's breath hitched. He had. Earlier, before the stylists arrived, he had rubbed his wrists against her neck. A subtle claim that masked her scent with his own heavy wood smoke and rain aroma. To any wolf in that room, she would smell like the alpha of the Sterling pack. "And as for who you are," Dominic continued, leaning down to whisper against her ear, "tonight you are not Clara the refugee. You are the woman who holds the alpha's attention. That makes you the most powerful person in the room." He offered her his arm. "Shall we?" The drive to the hotel was a blur of city lights, seen through the tinted windows of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. When they arrived, the paparazzi swarm was blinding. Flashes popped like strobe lights. "Mr. Sterling, over here. Dominic, who is the mystery woman? Is it true Sterling Industries is merging with the Asian markets?" Dominic ignored them all. He guided Clara through the gauntlet, with a hand firmly on the small of her back, a physical shield against the chaos. Inside, the ballroom was a sea of champagne, velvet, and hushed conversations. As soon as the announcer declared, "Alpha Dominic Sterling," the room went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to them. Clara felt her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She saw Vanessa across the room, wearing a shimmering red dress, holding a glass of wine so tightly the stem looked ready to snap. Vanessa's eyes were narrowed into slits of pure hatred. Dominic didn't falter. He led Clara straight into the center of the room. "Breathe," he murmured. The night passed in a whirlwind. Dominic introduced her to senators, tech CEOs, and visiting alphas. He didn't explain who she was. He simply introduced her as Clara, and the way he said her name, with reverence, dared anyone to ask for more. Around 10:00 p.m., the orchestra slowed the tempo. A waltz began. "Dance with me," Dominic said. It wasn't a question. He pulled her onto the floor. Clara followed his lead effortlessly. Her mother had taught her to dance before the pack turned on them. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them. The warmth of his hand, the scent of him, the way his eyes tracked her every movement. "You're doing well," he said softly. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "You don't look it. You look like a queen." "Dominic," she whispered, looking at his tie. "Why me? I need to know. Why did you save me? Why are you doing all of this?" Dominic stopped moving, though the music continued. They stood still in the center of the swirling couples. "Because," he said, his voice raw, "from the moment I saw you in the rain, my wolf has been screaming one thing. You are the other half of my soul, Clara. You are my crash." The double doors of the ballroom were thrown open with enough force to crack the wood. The music screeched to a halt. The chatter died instantly. Standing in the doorway was a man in a dusty leather trench coat, flanked by 6 armed enforcers. He had a scarred face, greasy hair, and eyes that burned with madness. It was Silas, the alpha of the Greystone pack. The guests gasped and backed away. Security moved forward, but Silas held up a hand. He was holding a piece of paper, a warrant. "Dominic Sterling," Silas bellowed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "You are harboring a fugitive." Dominic didn't flinch. He slowly turned Clara so she was behind him, shielding her with his body. His posture shifted from sophisticated CEO to lethal predator in a split second. "You are trespassing, Silas," Dominic said, his voice calm but deadly. "This is neutral ground. Leave before I remove your head." "I have a right to retrieve my property," Silas sneered, stepping onto the marble floor. He pointed a dirty finger at Clara peeking out from behind Dominic's shoulder. "That bitch stole from the pack treasury before she ran, and she kidnapped a pack member, her son. Liar!" Clara screamed, stepping out from behind Dominic, despite his attempt to stop her. "I took nothing, and Leo is my son. You wanted to kill him because he was small." "He is pack property," Silas roared, "and you are a thief. By the laws of the council, Sterling, you must hand her over, or you declare war on Greystone." The room held its breath. This was it. A political nightmare. If Dominic refused, he violated the ancient treaties. If he handed her over, he condemned her to death. Vanessa stepped forward from the crowd, a smug smile on her face. "Dominic," she said loudly, "don't be foolish. She's just a rogue. Hand her over and let's get back to the party. The investors are watching." Dominic looked at Vanessa, then at Silas. He looked at the warrant, then at the terrified woman trembling beside him. He began to laugh. It was a dark, terrifying sound. "War?" Dominic asked. He reached up and loosened his tie, tossing it to the floor. "You think I care about your petty treaties, Silas?" Dominic's eyes began to glow. His canines extended. "You want her?" Dominic growled, the sound vibrating through the floorboards. "Come and take her." The shattering of the double doors didn't just break the wood, it broke the reality of the evening. Splinters flew across the polished marble floor like shrapnel, and the orchestra's melody died in a discordant screech of strings. A cold wind swept into the warm ballroom, carrying with it the scent of wet dog, stale beer, and rot. It was the scent of the Greystone pack. Silas stood in the ruined threshold, a nightmare in a dusty leather trench coat. He was flanked by 6 enforcers, men who looked more like hired thugs than wolves, their eyes darting around the room with feral hunger. But it was Silas who commanded the terror. His face was a map of violence, scarred and pockmarked, his eyes burning with a madness that had consumed his pack for years. "Dominic Sterling!" Silas's voice was a gravelly roar that seemed to shake the crystal chandeliers above. "You harbor a fugitive! You defy the council laws!" The silence that followed was absolute. Champagne glasses were lowered. Senators and socialites froze, unsure if this was a theatrical performance or a terrorist attack. Dominic didn't flinch. He slowly moved Clara behind him, his body becoming a solid wall of muscle and tuxedo wool between her and the threat. "You are interrupting my evening, Silas," Dominic said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a deadly, vibrating frequency that made the hair on Clara's arms stand up. "This is neutral territory. You have 10 seconds to leave before I mount your head on the gates." Silas sneered, stepping fully into the light. He reached into his coat and pulled out a rolled parchment, stamped with the wax seal of the Regional Wolf Council. "I have a warrant." Silas held it up, shaking it at the crowd. "That woman, the one hiding behind your expensive suit, is property of the Greystone Pack. She is a thief who stole from our treasury. She is a kidnapper who stole a pack pup." A gasp rippled through the room. Whispers ignited like wildfire. "Thief? Kidnapper? Liar!" The scream tore from Clara's throat before she could stop it. She stepped out from behind Dominic's protection, her hands trembling not with fear, but with a sudden, blinding rage. "I stole nothing, and Leo is my son. You wanted to kill him because he was a runt. You sentenced an infant to death." Silas's eyes locked onto her. "He is pack property, and you, 384, are a runaway bitch." He used her old tag number, a cruel reminder that to him, she was cattle. "Sterling, hand her over, or by the ancient laws I declare a blood feud on your house." The threat hung heavy in the air. A blood feud meant war. It meant the Sterling business empire would crumble under attacks, their territory would be besieged, and lives would be lost. Vanessa, standing near the buffet table, saw her opportunity. She stepped forward, her red dress shimmering under the lights, her face twisted in a mask of desperate pragmatism. "Dominic, for God's sake, be rational!" Vanessa shouted, her voice shrill. "Look at the investors. Look at the press. You are going to risk the entire Sterling legacy for a rogue. She's a criminal. Give him the girl and let's finish the gala." Clara felt a cold stone drop in her stomach. She looked at Dominic's back. He stood motionless. The logic was on Vanessa's side. One woman wasn't worth a war. Dominic turned his head slightly, looking at Vanessa with eyes that had lost all trace of humanity. "You are fired, Vanessa," he said, his tone devoid of emotion. "Get out of my sight before I mistake you for the enemy." He turned back to Silas, loosening his silk tie and letting it fall to the floor. He unbuttoned his tuxedo jacket and shrugged it off, revealing the white shirt underneath that strained against his flexing muscles. "A blood feud?" Dominic asked softly. A dark, terrifying smile spread across his face. "I accept." "Kill them all!" Silas shrieked. The ballroom exploded into violence. Silas's 6 enforcers shifted mid-stride. The sound of tearing fabric and cracking bone filled the room as men became wolves, mangled, grey beasts foaming at the mouth. They charged. "Cale, secure the guests!" Dominic roared. From the balconies, the Sterling security team leaped into the fray. Kyle, a massive timber wolf, collided with 2 Greystone enforcers in midair, a blur of fur and teeth. Tables were overturned, sending crystal and china crashing to the floor. The human guests screamed, stampeding toward the exits in a blind panic. Silas didn't shift immediately. He pulled a serrated hunting knife from his belt and lunged at Dominic. Dominic caught Silas's wrist with blinding speed. He twisted, snapping the bone with a sickening crunch. Silas howled, dropping the knife, but he used the momentum to headbutt Dominic, slamming his forehead into Dominic's nose. Blood sprayed across Dominic's white shirt. "Clara, run!" Dominic shouted, shoving Silas backward with a kick to the chest. But Clara couldn't run. 2 of the Greystone wolves had flanked the skirmish. They weren't interested in the alpha fight. They had their orders. "Get the girl." They circled her, growling low in their throats. Clara backed up against the stage, her heels slipping on the spilled champagne. She looked around for a weapon. Her eyes landed on a heavy, silver candelabra on a nearby banquet table. As the first wolf leaped, jaws snapping for her throat, Clara didn't freeze. She channeled every ounce of fear and anger from the last 3 years into her swing. Clang! The heavy silver base connected with the wolf's skull. The beast yelped, crashing to the floor, stunned. The second wolf hesitated, surprised by the prey's bite, but then it snarled, crouching to spring. Dominic saw it. He saw the wolf preparing to tear into his mate. Something inside him snapped. The tether on his humanity severed completely. No! The roar wasn't human. It was a sonic boom that shattered the remaining windows of the ballroom. Dominic fell to his knees, his body convulsing. His shirt shredded as his spine expanded. Black fur erupted from his skin like oil. In seconds, the man was gone. In his place stood Titan. Titan was a monster of a wolf, pitch black, standing nearly 5 feet at the shoulder, with muscles that rolled like steel cables under his pelt. His eyes were twin suns of burning gold. The second wolf lunged at Clara. Titan intercepted him like a freight train. He caught the grey wolf in his massive jaws, shook him once with bone-breaking force, and tossed him across the room like a rag doll. The wolf hit the far wall and didn't move. Titan turned, placing himself over Clara. He let out a low, rumbling growl that vibrated through the floorboards, a warning to every living thing in the room. Touch her, and die. Silas, now shifted into a large, scarred brown wolf, charged Titan from behind. He sank his teeth into Titan's flank. Titan roared in pain, but spun with impossible agility. He slammed his body into Silas, knocking the brown wolf off his feet. The 2 alphas rolled across the dance floor, a whirlwind of snapping jaws and claws. It wasn't a fair fight. Silas fought with dirty desperation, aiming for eyes and joints. But Titan fought with the wrath of a god protecting his temple. Titan pinned Silas to the ground, his heavy paws pressing the breath out of the Greystone Alpha. He clamped his jaws around Silas's throat, not to kill, but to hold. He applied pressure, just enough to let Silas know that death was a millimeter away. Silas whimpered. He went limp. He bared his neck. Submission. The fighting stopped. The Greystone wolves, sensing their alpha's defeat, lowered their tails and backed away. Kyle and the Sterling Guard circled them, snarling. Titan held the grip for a long, terrifying moment. Then he released Silas and stepped back. He looked at Clara. Dominic shifted back. He stood amidst the wreckage, naked, his body heaving with exertion, blood, both his and Silas's, streaking his skin. He didn't care about his nudity. He didn't care about the cameras flashing in the distance from the brave reporters who had stayed. He walked over to Clara. She was trembling now, the adrenaline fading, leaving her shaking with the aftershocks. She dropped the bent candelabra. "Dominic," she whispered. Someone threw a tablecloth to Dominic. He wrapped it around his waist and turned to face the room. He walked over to where Silas lay, now shifted back into a broken, gasping human form. Dominic looked down at him with cold contempt. Then he looked up, his gaze sweeping over the remaining crowd, the press, and the trembling Vanessa. "Let the record show," Dominic announced, his voice hoarse but commanding, "that Alpha Silas attacked a protected guest on neutral ground. He has forfeited his leadership." He turned and reached a hand out to Clara. She stepped over the glass and debris. She took his hand. His grip was iron-strong, warm and reassuring. "Furthermore," Dominic continued, pulling Clara to his side, "this woman is not a fugitive. She is not a rogue. She is Clara Sterling." He paused, letting the name sink in. "She is the Luna of the Sterling pack. She is my mate, and the boy, Leo, is my son, by blood and law. Any insult to them is an insult to me. Any threat to them will be met with death." He looked directly at the cameras. "Is that clear?" Silence stretched, heavy and profound. Then, slowly, Kyle bowed his head. Then the security team. Then the other visiting alphas in the room, recognizing the power shift, bowed their heads in respect. Dominic turned to Clara. The terrifying mask of the alpha fell away, leaving only the man who loved her. He reached up, wiping a speck of blood from her cheek with his thumb. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice cracking with worry. "No," Clara said, tears finally spilling over. "I'm okay. You're bleeding." "I don't feel it," he murmured. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling the scent that had started it all. "It's over, Clara. No one will ever hunt you again." Clara closed her eyes, listening to the steady, powerful beat of his heart against her ear. For the first time in her life, the future wasn't a dark void. It was warm. It was safe. It was him. This story reminds us that sometimes the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. Clara's journey from a terrified rogue to a powerful Luna proves that strength isn't about physical power. It's about the courage to protect the ones you love. If you enjoyed this story of romance, betrayal, and justice, please hit that like button. It helps us create more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next episode of the Alpha series. Share this video with a friend who loves a happy ending. Thanks for watching.